start the show, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Beef, the Beefmaster Education Endowment Fund. Thank you for everything you do for the cattle industry, this breed, and us. Thank you for supporting us. SEBA, the Southeastern Beefmaster Breeders Association. Thank you for all you're doing, especially for the Southeast, and look out for their sale every August in convention. Emmons Beefmasters, Mr. Steve and Miss Cindy needs no introduction. Thank you for what you do for the breed, and thank you for supporting us. C&M Ranches out of Kershaw, South Carolina, the Chick family. Thank you for what you all do for us. It means a lot. Lissy's Beefmasters down in Texas. Thank you to them for supporting the show. And look out for their sales, multiple sales a year, plus some frozen genetic sales. Cottage Farms Beefmasters. Thank you for supporting us, and thank you for what you do for the breed as well. Been in it 50 years, and that's saying something. Sea Shepherd Beefmasters down in Texas, thank you for supporting us. Jones Beefmasters over in Savannah, Tennessee, Mr. Clark Jones, look out for his sale every June. Has great cattle and breeds, just great stuff. Valor Cattle Company out of Georgia, thank you for supporting us, and we couldn't do it without any of you, and we really appreciate it. Welcome to Beefmaster Banner. We're your hosts, Josh Morrison and Jared Strickland, along with Dr. Lance Bauer again. How y'all guys doing?
Oh, we're good.
I'm glad there's no fighting over there since Tennessee's coach ended up not at A&M, so I think we're good now.
At least we won. That's all that matters.
Oh, we were just talking about that before the show, and it was funny. We were laughing. We didn't know. I didn't even realize that A&M was trying to get Tennessee's coach, which I don't pay attention. If it's not NC State or the Texas Longhorns, I don't do much with them.
Oh man, that Longhorn subject may be sore.
That's sore with you guys down there in A&M. I tell you,
I think that's sore with the entire SEC now. I think they made everybody mad from what I'm reading.
It was sore with Dr. Mask last time he was on here. It was I thought he might just hang up on us, but he didn't. So I tell you, it's fun though. I just, like I told you earlier, I don't know why. I've just, ever since I was little, I like the Longhorns, but I'm always an NC State fan first. So, it's not too bad. We're never good at anything, but like I told you, we were magically good at basketball and baseball this year. So I'm going to ride that high as long as we can, at least till next season when we're no good again.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. North Carolina had several. They had two. Did they have two teams in the?
They started out with 4 teams in there. And don't worry, we got put out rather quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they had NC State went to the World Series too, right?
Yes.
And
yes, and North Carolina. The SEC ruled pretty quick though, so they showed us who was boss.
That's the way it usually goes, ain't it?
The SEC is a conference obsessed with football that's really better at baseball than anything else.
Yeah, that's probably a good way of putting it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, tonight we're I guess before we get too many people too mad at us because we don't like their team. We're going to talk about Carcass EPDs. I'm going to say this is probably one of the more well-known set of EPDs, maybe that folks know, but maybe diving deep into them, we can maybe bring out some things that maybe they didn't know about them. So kind of getting started. Like I said on the last episode, we're going to kind of ask this question on every episode. A lot of the questions will be the same, but different answers. Why are we measuring carcass traits?
And so it's just like we talked about. The last episode was pounds of beef. This is the quality of beef. We're measuring these carcass traits, IMF, that's going to go towards your quality grade, your ribeye area, your fat thickness, that goes towards your yield grade. That drives premiums when those carcasses are hanging on the rail. So that's what we got the carcass EPDs for. You go to your favorite steakhouse. You don't go there to eat a standard steak with no marbling and you don't enjoy that. You go to your favorite steakhouse to go get you a prime ribeye and enjoy it. So our carcass EPDs are really, the economic value there is hanging on the rail, and the yield grade with the ribeye area and the fat, because those are those two traits go into calculating ribeye area. I mean, not ribeye area, yield grade. And then IMF goes into quality grade. So that's what carcass trait EPDs are for.
Yeah, I like a good piece of fat on my steak. So I like a good ribeye. I'm not a big lean steak kind of person, so I want some flavor and some texture, and this is where you get it from.
Yeah, you gotta have that marblet in there to make it work.
And I think maybe before we dive too far into this, I hear a lot of times, well, we're not gonna scan like the Angus Association. We're not gonna scan like these folks. But Lance, maybe in your own words, sure, we're probably not gonna ever scan like an Angus, but we've still got a lot of things going for us as far as our carcass data.
Yeah. So my deal is, I mean, that is what Angus is known for. That's what they've been selected for. We're not going to out Angus and Angus. That's not the goal of selecting on these traits. As we select on these traits, as we talked about from our last episode, we want to select and we want to remove the bottom end. We want to cull out those animals, and these guys that are using our bulls as commercial bulls, we want them to be able to use our IMF EPD to go out and put them on a set of Angus cows and still run those steers through the yard and hit that industry average of over 85% choice. And we've shown recently with two sets of data that we can do that with those cattle. We're not going to out Angus the Angus, but we need to be acceptable in what we do and make sure that we're not hurting those cattle that we're putting these bulls on. And that's been a reputation that all American Bos Indicus breeds have had, is that we don't marble and we don't go out there and do well. And so we've got to defeat that reputation that we have, and we're working on it. But, these EPDs select for those traits, those carcass traits, and help us improve them.
Yeah, and kind of like you were saying, and it goes back to some of the other episodes we talked about the extremes. We're always looking at that IMF number, that maybe the actual number, but maybe we'll get into a little bit more about how the EPD really probably matters more than that actual number and the consistency. Like you're saying, we got to make that industry standard. So we don't need to take them backwards. We need to keep them where they're at, or improve keep the carcass where we're at, but improve the traits that they're lacking, so.
Well, it's important to note too that yes, everything at the lab has changed. So it's, everything is pretty much trending lower. I have noticed for us, our heifers aren't taking near the hit that our bulls are. I don't know why that is. Lance, you may know that. And if you do,
I don't have an answer on that. I can tell you that, the labs did change the models for actuals, but the correlations, the ranks, all of that between animals, that didn't change, and that's what affects the EPD. So I don't think, everybody says, well, we've been preaching this and we've been working this way, have we lost our genetic progress? No, our genetic progress never stopped. We've been continuing to make genetic progress. We're just, we're just, excuse me, actual numbers are lower, and then that kind of goes into, why do we use an EPD rather than an actual number? Because when you look at an actual number, and let's say all three of us have cattle, and we've all three developed these cattle to that stage, and we're getting ready to scan them, but I'm out in College Station and I've never put a drop of grain out or anything for these cattle. Josh, maybe you fed some, and Jared, you've just poured feed to them.
Full feed.
Yeah, full feed. You went to producers and said, just send me truckloads, and these might all be the exact same genetics. I mean, it never happened, but we've all got clones, and so there's nothing genetically different. But those cattle that are on full feed, it doesn't matter. They're going to marble more and they're going to have bigger ribeye. They're going to have more weight. I mean, everything's going to be bigger than the cattle that didn't receive the feed. You know, prime example, my best friend and I growing up, I mean, I'm my height, I'm about 6', 6'1". He's about 5'8", 5'9". Both of us growing up had everything we wanted to eat. We were raised in very similar environments. You know, had everything we needed. You take us and put us somewhere where we don't have everything we need, I'm probably still going to be several inches taller than him. I may be 5'8", 5'9". He may be 5'3", 5'4". So that's why it's important to look at the EPD, because you're getting that true genetic value.
Well, I'll go ahead and put it out there. I have a really bad habit of looking at just hard data, just looking at the actual scan data. I've just gotten used to doing it, and I need to stop doing it, but I just have a bad habit of doing it. And I'm, you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that, but that's why it's good, especially for this episode for me, is to learn how to read that EPD. You know, maybe going into it, can you just kind of run through the Carcass EPDs and just kind of maybe mention how to read those and kind of what we're looking for?
Yeah, so we'll just start with ribeye area. I mean, ribeye area, it's going to be expressed in square inches, you know, difference in square inches of ribeye area. And so, you know, if you're looking at a 0.1 versus a 0, you're expecting on average those calves out of that bull with a 0.1 to have 0.1 square inches more ribeye area on average when they're scanned. IMF expressed in a percent. So same thing, you're just going to look at that difference between those IMFs, and then fat, that's the rib fat thickness. You're gonna be looking at, you know, fat thickness expressed in centimeters. Or, sorry, inches. Sorry, I was going back to research. You know, everything there's got to be metric, no inches. So you know, it's all just differences. You're looking at the difference in those animals. And like I said earlier, the ribeye area, that's important for calculating yield grade. The rib fat, important for calculating yield grade. And then your IMF, that's your quality grade. That's your prime choice select standard. And so, like I said, those are the EPDs we look at. And now, right now, I'll tell you, Beefmaster is based on ultrasound EPDs. I'd like to work to move towards where we're based on true carcass EPDs. We need more carcass data, more carcass numbers on that. So we're moving that way. We're going to try to get moved that way. But right now we're based on that ultrasound data.
And I guess at that point, we would not, I mean, would we not need to scan once we got to a point like that, or do we still need to scan?
We would still need to scan. We'd still need to continue to scan, because those two traits are highly correlated, you know, the scan versus the actual kill data. So they're highly correlated. We'd need to continue to scan, you know, just to bring more records in. You know, the more data points we have to compare, the better off we are. You know, in scanning and these ultrasound EPDs, the reason we get these is because, you know, we talk about these high dollar cows that sold the other weekend, and you're not going to kill one of those cows just to see what she's got, you know,
No,
under the skin.
goes back to that price per pound being high, right?
Yeah,
Phew.
you're not going to kill one of those cows to see what's under what she's got there. So that's why it's important to look at this. And now, as we get more genetics and more things like that, and we can do some carcass EPDs based on true carcass data, that's going to be a game changer.
And that's something I know we've talked about it in the past, but if you haven't heard that, we are working on a steer feed out program and to get those data. You may want to hit that just real quick.
Yeah, so we are working on a steer feed out program. I'm gonna get in contact with some guys here pretty quick. Probably push some stuff at convention, but maybe get some stuff shipped up November, late October, early November, shipped to feed yard in Kansas and hopefully get some stuff rolling there.
Yeah, that's exciting.
As far as heritability, I know we talked in the last episode about how heritable those traits were, and we kind of said moderate to high. My assumption would be the heritability on carcass traits are probably extremely high, right?
I would never say they're extremely high, but they're moderate to high. I mean, so they're probably a little bit on average a little bit more heritable than your growth traits. So it's really easy to change these carcass traits in a generation or so. And now generation in cattle, that's still a long time, but it's a whole lot shorter than trying to, select on like fertility that's slowly heritable. I mean, it takes generation after generation of selecting for fertility to get where you want to exactly with fertility.
Yeah, so I guess pretty much what you're saying when you're looking at, say, commercial bull buyers looking for these traits or whatever, they feel like they can move the needle with these traits, so it's important. I mean,
It's important. You can move the needle and you can hurt yourself. I mean, with them being, moderately heritable, you can hurt yourself if you don't select for them correctly.
yeah, that's especially these folks that are probably feeding out all the way to finish and stuff like that. If you get to that point, if you're disappointed in what you get, that could be be pretty tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as like how these correlate to each other, obviously they all correlate, but I guess like ribeye per 100 would directly relate with rib fat, and would IMF and rump fat kind of directly correlate as well? Or
So, I mean, all your fat traits like IMF and your fat, all that's going to be pretty correlated for the most part. Again, there's going to be some that are outliers that don't, deposit all as IMF or deposit it all as rib fat or rump fat. In your ribeye area, it's going to be more correlated with your growth traits. I will tell you that, especially in bulls, what we see is basically up to a year of age. As your ribeye area goes up, your IMF goes up. Well, then when that testosterone really starts to kick in, that ribeye area keeps going up and your IMF starts to drop off. So we do see that a little bit in bulls. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's something to think about. I've always thought to myself, may not be completely 100% accurate, but it seems like to me in our herd that we've ultrasounded, it's hard to get a high or bigger ribeye with that higher IMF sometimes. And it may be like you man, maybe age or testosterone or something. But
Well, another thing to look at there is you're measuring a percentage of that ribeye. So I mean, if you got a really, really big ribeye, small ribeyes are easier to put a higher percent IMF in.
well, that may be what I'm seeing then, because it just seems like those bigger ribeyes have that lower IMF. So
kind of leaves you scratching your head sometimes.
well, I mean, it just made it make a lot of sense to me that I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, you smaller area, it's a little easier to get more percentage covered. So
No, that makes sense. And it goes back to what you said, finding your optimum. And I think it still probably goes to say here, just because my optimum might be something, Jared's may be different, especially in carcass traits too.
Yeah, carcass traits too. I mean, and like I said, it's always finding an optimum. Find what works for you. Find what your goal is, for your operation. And we're not here, as a breed. We're not here to say that we are the carcass breed. I mean, that's not what we're here to do. But I don't want to, when you use a Beefmaster bull on a set of commercial Angus influenced cows or Hereford cows, whatever kind of cows you got, I don't want you to use Beefmaster bull and hurt your carcass. I want you to use Beefmaster bull and maintain that industry standard.
I think that's really important that we think about that. What you're saying, Lance, is if we're heading the standard, let's use all of our other traits to make us better and more acceptable. Because like you've said, we've said it 100 times. You can't out Angus. I almost feel like, and this is just a personal opinion, take it for that. But I almost feel like the more you select for Carcass and single trait on that, it almost affects your phenotype as well. That's just what I see. It may not be true, but
I agree. I've found that it almost, and Lance, tell us if we're wrong, but I've almost found that the higher IMF you have, the more tubular you can start looking.
And I mean, I'll tell you anecdotally, I mean, I'm not gonna say there's research that supports it. Anecdotally, I've seen the same thing. The more IMF, the kind of, I would say steerier, they look more like a steer, like a feeder steer than they do a cow. Especially in the heifers, and you see it in bulls too. So like I said, it's an optimum. Everything's about finding an optimum, and let's make sure we don't keep the minimum around, because then we're not going to meet minimum industry standards. But let's not just go overboard and say we're going to select strictly on carcass and we're going to have prime grading 100% prime beef masters. That's just not going to happen.
yeah. And I think what you mentioned too, we've talked about it in the past as well. This is probably the area where you really want to do cut that bottom off, because when you're doing your culling process, not necessarily trying to find that big one, but if you cut that bottom off, you're slowly moving in the right direction or maintaining that standard.
Well, and it goes to like you talk to people, especially out my way, that they don't know about cattle. All they know is they like to go to the grocery store and buy a steak. But when they start talking about it, they go, "Man, I want that." It says certified Angus beef on it. What they don't realize is, it's no secret. There's not sure there's Angus in there, but I mean, they don't have to be Angus to be certified Angus beef. And they've done I will say, since we're talking about Angus, the Angus Association has done a great job. They are marketing geniuses, or have been for years, it seems like. Because just like that, I mean, you see certified Angus beef, people are going to buy that over something else just because they think it's a better product, when in turn it may not be.
Yeah. And we can thank the University of Tennessee for that.
Go Vols.
Good job, Jared. And right or wrong, I'm not trying to downplay it or down on them or pick on them. It's just, it's funny how I mean, you don't hear about Herefords, you don't hear about Charolais, you don't hear about Santa Gertrude. I mean, it's Angus, and now over this way, it's some of our folks over here has got into the Wagyu business.
Oh yeah.
So you hear that mess, and it's just it's it's all in what you want, but I don't want to pay $300 for a steak either. So
I mean, it's marketing in it, and they have something that they have the marble and all that, so they have some things to go with. But like I said, it's mostly marketing.
I got to be careful because I don't want to get in trouble during all this, but I'm just expressing my point of view here.
Well, that's okay. That's what it's for, ain't it?
And I mean, I would say that there's probably some beef masters that I would guess that probably would go CAB.
Oh yeah, there are. I mean, it's better. I mean,
Especially on the crossbreds.
some of those crossbreds. I mean, we run into a fair number of crossbred animals that'll go CAB.
And I think too, it's
or qualify for another premium. I mean, so
yeah. And like Jared said, we can, we need to hit our optimum and express our other traits. I mean, we have some of the best mama cows there are. I truly believe that a beef master female is the best female there is. I truly believe that. And I think even going as far as saying our half blood beef master, whether it be beef master Angus, beef master Charolais, whatever it is, I think that's some of the best cows that there are out there.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think that's one of the big things here is, we focus on these carcass EPDs. We make sure that we don't hurt our carcass and our ability to sell bulls, to people that are retaining ownership. But we cannot single trait select on these carcass traits and lose sight of the fact that we are the maternal breed. We've got the maximum retained heterosis of all the breeds because we are a 3-breed composite. It's important to realize that, these are these are additional traits, and again, it's a tool. These are additional traits to select on.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And even, we all kind of get hung up on IMF too, but yield grade, there's a lot of premiums that go into a carcass versus just the choice or
Yeah.
prime. You got yield grade and size and all those things too. So that's something always to remember that we could add advantages to. And going back to, we've even talked about sustainability. I know you've mentioned it, Lance, about how many health treatments less that
Yeah.
when we cross those cattle. And to me, and the end product, that's still a kind of almost not really technically a carcass trait, but it does help a carcass without having to have any injections, different things like that. So I mean, there's lots of things to look at that we bring advantages to.
100%. And I mean, kind of rolls into these last two questions. These are going to be the same exact last two questions we're probably going to have in this whole series. But if I'm walking through a pen of cattle, Lance, and whether it be bulls or heifers, how am I going to interpret these to buy the best for what I need?
So again, it's like I've said, it goes back to your goals. You know, and with these carcass EPDs, let's look at these carcass EPDs and let's just make sure that we're not picking up the bottom end, and taking the bottom, trying to take the bottom end home with you. Make sure that you're taking something home that's going to help you out. If you look at your EPDs and you say, man, I need some IMF, let's not go pick the lowest IMF animal in the sale for her with that EPD. Let's go pick one with a higher IMF EPD.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think going for that 20 something, 30 something percentile may be a good place to be
Yeah,
as well.
I think if you just start there, you're good.
Yeah. I mean, and going back to being highly heritable, or say moderate traits or highly heritable, you're going to see the effect of that the generations down the line too. So that's what I like about the carcass CPDs is you can move it quicker
You can
than,
move them.
yeah, you can move them if you select.
Absolutely. You get going if you get going down the wrong road, you can correct it really quick.
Yes. You can also wreck it really quick, but
well,
Two-way straight then.
I wasn't going to put that in there, but yeah, you can.
Oh, wait.
We might as well tell the whole story while we're at it.
let's tell the whole story. We can wreck it real quick, but we can fix it. It's one of the easier fixes because of the heritability. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, kind of going into the last question is a piece of advice for a new breeder may not have a clue what they're looking at when it comes to carcass EPDs. I mean, what's a piece of advice you give?
I think I think again, it's pick an optimum, know what your goal is. And my advice for any new breeder, on this is, hey, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. What kind of steak do you want to eat when you go to your favorite steakhouse? I mean, so we need to be very cognizant of these EPDs, these carcass EPDs. But we also need to be very cognizant of the fact that we are a maternal breed and we're not ever going to out Angus. We're not going to out Wagyu. So we need to be aware of that and say, hey, we need to select something acceptable.
That makes a lot of sense.
I'll steal a quote from the great Robert Scott. Get in where you fit in. We just got to get in where we fit in and be the absolute best we can do at it.
Kind of going like he said about the Wagyu. There's a reason that steak's really expensive. It costs a lot to make.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to think about.
There's lots of massages on those bulls' backs it goes on too.
I don't know about the massaging, but they have to eat a lot of feed.
Well, this was another good episode, guys. We're kind of right in the thick of it now, as far as getting. We may be halfway through this and maybe a little over now, but it's fun to get on here and laugh a little bit, cut up. It's also good to hopefully somebody will get something out of this. I know I sure do every time we talk about this, because I don't know near what I should about EPDs, and using them as the tool that they are. So it's really helping me. So I hope it helps everyone out there.
Yeah, we've had a lot of good response on these. So I hope that people are learning something, and I really enjoy Lance coming on and giving a good explanation from his standpoint and make it make sense. It's hard for me to do that.
Maybe we don't have Lance on here regretting his decision of agreeing to do this series yet.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
We try not to be too hard on you over there.
No, it's been good. I enjoy it. Getting the education out to everybody and, stimulating some thoughts and, getting people thinking and working to improve themselves, improve their herd, and improve the breed as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And we'll continue doing it.
That's what it's all about at the end of the day, is us all getting better and kind of going back to what we said, make that standard and make it to where we're the acceptable choice and this choice that's sought out.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But guys, that's about all the time we've got tonight. We'll move on to the next set of EPDs. Probably do a couple episodes in between, but we'll continue doing them, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.
Sounds good.
Appreciate it.
See y'all. Thank y'all.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to the Beefmaster Banner podcast. Please know that we are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and we are on YouTube. Just search Beefmaster Banner. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We love hearing from you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.